is unlike any other. We've seen the market do some, I would say, whimsical things, and these values were astounding when we were first looking at this data. So I just want to clarify first off, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I am the county assessor. I am not a tax assessor. The county and the assessor and the treasurer have two different roles. The assessor basically is charged by the state with classifying property and valuing it. So that notice of value postcard, it's not a bill, and that estimate of taxes on it is overstated because we don't know what the mill levies will be yet for the 2023 tax year. That all is set towards the end of the year, once the various taxing entities get an idea of the revenues that will be collected. And then they do their budgets and they set their mills, and the county commission typically just have it administered. The only mill levies that the county commissioners control are the ones that are related to Summit County government. And you can see your taxing area and such by going to the your property on the property information searching out, which we'll touch on later.
I'm sorry, the sound has changed. We can't understand
Not
you.
a tax bill, we don't know the taxes yet. And right now, in the state of Colorado, ever since the repeal of Gallagher, all of our property taxes have been in limbo. What's going on with that, basically? Let's kick off and start with the most important thing in any reappraisal, and that's our data collection period or sales study period. As you can see, our appraisal date for this 2023 reappraisal is June 30th of 2022. So when you're looking at that postcard, that value on there is the assessor's office opinion of your value as of June 30th, 2022. We cannot consider anything that happened after June 30th of 2022. It went up. Short-term rental regulations were put into place by some of the towns after that June 30th date. Life goes on. Things are still happening. Interestingly, in 2021, throughout the state, there was the least number of appeals filed. And that's because after our appraisal date for that reappraisal, the market was going crazy. It was climbing. And so now we've had some softening, not to the level of the 2009 reappraisal. Those values came out right after the Great Recession hit in October of 2008. I always think Lehman Brothers Bank tanked, and and then we got to put out our values. Woo, that was a bad reappraisal. So this year, I think it's important to focus on this appraisal date of June 30th, 2022. And when you're looking at that value on your postcard, and you're looking around in your neighborhood, and you're aware, I had a lady tell me the other day, I live in Willowbrook, and I back up to Willow Creek, and I'm in a single family, and I know that the duplex down the street from me that does not back up to Willow Creek sold for $1.2 million, and it's pretty crappy. And you're valuing me at like 1.4. That seems, I think that's right. So if you're aware of what's going on in the market on June 30th, 2022, and you think that value, you could have sold your place for that value on June 30th of 2022, don't appeal. But if you don't think you could have sold your place for that value on your postcard on June 30th, 2022, then you may have a reason to appeal. So I think it's also important to point out here with this data collection period, statutorily, they say the 2 years prior to the appraisal date, but statute allows us to go back up to 60 months. So that puts us in July 1st of 2017. We are doing multiple regression analysis. The more data the more accurate our adjustments can be. So we've used all the sales that occurred from July 2017 to June 30, 2022 to come up with different adjustment factors for property characteristics. The goal, though, is to have the last 2 years of sales closest to our appraisal date of June 30th support that regression value. So that's our sales, that's the sales study period that we really focus on, with sales supporting the regression value. And again, I just want to say that we do not consider anything that occurred after June 30th of 2022. I think it's also important to note that the state requires us to adjust all the sales for changes in market conditions between the sale date and the appraisal date. And so this reappraisal, we have seen some really astounding time adjustments. We call that a time adjustment, but it's basically an adjustment for changes in the market conditions between the sale date and the appraisal date. Like I said, they're astounding this go around. But we'll look at a graph and we'll see why. So next, and even though I pointed out that I'm not the tax assessor, but this year, because this is unprecedented, dramatic increases in value that we've seen, I think talking about taxes is pretty essential. Also because our taxes are in limbo right now with the state ever since the repeal of Gallagher in 2020. So whenever you're calculating your taxes, you basically take that actual value on the postcard and multiply it by the assessment rate. That is the percentage that is also shown on that postcard. So for 2023, that assessment rate went to 6.765. The legislation last year set it at that rate. It was 6.95 for 2022. So it's going down. And then there's also a proposition that will be on the ballot that would lower it a little bit more to 6.7. Also, what's in place right now, before you multiply your actual value by the assessment rate, I think it's important to know that there's a $15,000 value reduction that's currently in place. I know it sounds like pocket change for us up here when our average home is 1.7 million. But, you know, these laws were written by people that live in the Front Range. It's the majority of where Colorado's population is. And that kind of value reduction does impact people on the Front Range with, you know, lesser home values and such. So yeah, you'll take your actual value, reduce it by 15,000, multiply it by the assessment rate of 6.765, which is basically the percentage of value that your taxes are based on. And that gets you your assessed value. That assessed value is then multiplied by your local mill levy. The mill levies vary just depending on your taxing area and your different taxing entities within that area. Yes, sir. Yeah. Let's talk about that later. I do touch on that later. Yes. Yes, there is all sorts of confusion because the mill rates have not been set yet for 2023. We don't know how much they're going to go down. So that estimate on the postcards that I gave everybody a heart attack is the 2022 mill levy. That's what we have to use. So that's what we can use. And that's why we call it an estimate. Yes, ma'am? Oh, yes, my bad. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, it's the 15,000 is taken off the actual value. Thank you. And that's also a part of that Proposition HH that we'll see on the ballot in November. That proposition is proposing to lower the assessment rate to 6.7 and increase that value reduction from 15,000 to 50,000.
Next time there's a question from the audience, if you could repeat it into the microphone before you.
So yeah, again, that's just an estimate, like the gentleman said back there. We don't really know. The idea is that the mill will go down to help soften this. And there was a bill this year that was passed in the legislative session just recently that would allow our taxing entities to temporarily lower their mill levies and then raise them back up without having to get voter approval. That was passed. It has not yet been signed, but we're thinking it will be. All right, so next, that brings us to paper. This is the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, 1992. I can't really talk about value and taxes right now without touching on Tabor and Gallagher, because this is what's coming into play right now hugely. And that's when I say taxing entities can lower their mill levy without having to get voter approval to raise them back up. That's because Tabor basically says any kind of increase in taxes must be voter approved. So taxing entities aren't really motivated to lower their bill low enough to help soften this blow, because they have to then ask you, hey, can we raise it back up to what it was? And who knows what's going to be happening with the market when they need to ask us that. So Tabor, it was passed in 1992. It has 4 basic restrictions on taxation and spending. That's the mill levy, as touched on, and that's tax revenues. There's a limit on the taxing revenues that taxing entities can collect. There's a limit on spending. That's our Tabor refund. And then there's the residential assessment rate, which basically is related to that asking voter approval. If it's lowered, hey, can we raise it back up? So there's no, Tabor does not put a limit or a cap on home value and appreciation, but it does specify that assessors' offices must use the market approach in valuing residential property. So let's now talk about Gallagher. We got rid of this in 2020. This was repealed by the voters. Mainly, it was put out there on the ballot. You know, I'm sure can't recall perfectly, but I know it probably started out with without raising taxes, and then it went on and on and on with a bunch of googly dots, and we voted yes. So Gallagher basically said assessment rate. All right, let me go back here. When we repealed it, we basically put the assessment rate into the hands of our legislators. And that's why we have this bill that was passed last year that set the assessment rate. That's also why we're voting in November to set it again, because Gallagher specified that the residential assessment rate was a floating rate. And as values went up, the residential assessment rate went down. This would have really helped right now. That is because the ratio of revenue coming into the state of Colorado, Gallagher basically dictated that revenue from residential property could only be 45% of the income throughout the state, whereas commercial and others would be 55%. So as residential properties went up, that assessment rate for residential went down to keep that 45% ratio there. And so the next graph kind of gives you an idea of Gallagher. When it was voted in, when it passed in 1982, at that time, all the rates were 29, 30%. 30%. Living in Colorado. And ever since Gallagher was passed, the residential assessment rate for residential property has been going down. That means our properties are appreciating as expected. That's why, you know, they say owning a home is a big part of wealth building. So, you know, I don't want to postulate what would be happening right now if we didn't repeal Gallagher in 2020. My guess is that assessment rate would probably be between 4 and 5% instead of 6.765. But that's what happened, and now we got it. I just want to clarify that is not the assessor's office is doing throughout the state. This was a voter initiative, and it was passed. Personally, we kind of liked Gallagher because we knew what the assessment rate would be, and we could gauge things better, and we knew, you know, it was set in stone, and we knew what to follow. And now, you know, we have voter initiatives passing probably in November that's going to have us scrambling to get tax notices out with the right assessment rate. But you guys don't want to hear about that. You just want to see the baby. Yes. Ideally, it was to help our commercial businesses because commercial is assessed at such a higher rate. Since the repeal, though, this is the first year that we're seeing a lower rate for our commercial business. It's going from 29% to 27.9%. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the rules that the assessor's office has to follow when we do these reappraisals. Basically, we reappraise every 2 years in the odd number year. And the language in statute basically says we appraise to the value as of the June 30th in the preceding year. So June 30th, 2022, that's our appraisal date for our 2023 reappraisal. As you can imagine, in 2009, our appraisal date was June 30th of 2008. Market was still going like this, didn't take. So then also residential property is valued using the market approach only. We only look at sales. And then also that statutory data collection period or study period that I had a little timeline on there for initially. That basically says the appraisal date is June 30th. We can go back 18 months from that, and then it allows us to go back further up to 60 months. So we just do it all. We use all the data because we have that advantage, whereas a fee appraiser is providing you with the current value, and they have sales that are just occurring right there around the time of that appraisal. So we are also required to adjust all the sales to their level of value as if they sold on June 30th of 2022. That's that time adjustment that I was saying was adjustment for changes in market conditions between the sale date and the appraisal date. And then in our analysis here in Summit County, we had a little over 10,000 residential sales that were being evaluated for this reappraisal. And that was over the 5-year period. So you all know you got your postcards. That's why you're here. Those postcards, we're required to notify you of your actual value and your classification with the associated assessment rate. And then there's a little blurb on instructions how to appeal. We try to make it super easy. On the other side of the postcard, we had a little blurb to fill out a form. You don't even need a form. You just need to send an email, or you can go online. When you're online looking at your property data, you can always submit an appeal that way, or you can write us a letter and send it in the mail, or walk it in. We'll take it anyway. You can even write it on a napkin. We just need to know what property you're talking about, what you're appealing, that you want to appeal it, your signature, so that we know it's you, because we can't have other people appealing for you unless they have authorization. So if you are going to hire somebody, you'll need to provide them with agent authorization. And then, of course, an email or a phone number so we can contact you if we have any questions. So those are the 4 things you want to include in your appeal. Yes, ma'am? I am not going to go into real specifics, but we will have Heather here a little later. I told her around 10:30 she could come. She's one of the appraisers in the office. I'm sorry, guys, I never introduced myself. My name is Lisa Eurich. I am your assessor. I was elected last year. Thanks so much. And this is my first reappraisal as assessor. I have worked in the office for a decade. But this, lucky me, I get this super fun reappraisal first go around. But that's okay. Okay.
Do you have any expected time of response to an appeal?
Yes.
Repeat the question.
So, a madam in the audience asked if we have a time for responding to the appeal. If you submit an appeal from the jump, which is May 1, as soon as you got your postcard, we might have already reached out to you and had some questions or wanted to clarify issues that you brought up. I know some appeals that I'm working, I have already emailed people, but statutorily, we must mail out notices of determination on the last day of June. So this year, taxpayers get, always in the past, May 31st has been the deadline to file an appeal. This year, it's been pushed back to June 8th. And our assessor deadline to respond is June 30th. That's the way it's always been. Yes, sir. June 8th is a postmark date, yes. So if you're gonna mail it, then you wanna make sure it's postmarked June 8th. If you're gonna do an email submission, we do get a timestamp there, get it in before midnight. Yes, sir. All right, so let's continue here. Yes, you have till June 8th. This is just the first level of appeals. This is assessor level of appeals that we're doing right now. If you don't like that notice of determination value that's sent out on June 30th, there's a very quick turnaround time here. You have until July 15th to file a second level of appeal with the County Board of Equalization. Now this is being escalated to the county level where the county commissioners have appointed referees to hear your property concerns and make a decision. So those hearings happen from July 15th to August 5th. And then if you don't like the county board's decision, you can take it to the third level, and that is the state. There are three options for you there. You can go to the Board of Assessment Appeals, which is the most popular, binding arbitration, which is the least popular, because that's binding. You basically, whatever's decided by the arbitrator is the final decision. You do not have an opportunity then to take it to the Colorado Supreme Court. So that's binding arbitration is the second option, or district court. And then if you don't like any of the decisions that happen by the Board of Assessment Appeals or district court, you can take it to the Court of Appeals or the Colorado Supreme Court. And that's when we set specific legislation, or we might need to clarify language in legislation. We have had quite a few things recently go to the Colorado Supreme Court, and that's been our contiguous land parcels. We needed clarifying language on this. So just to give, that's our date. And then let's talk about what everybody was really on their mind, and that's appealing your value. So we try to make this as simple as possible. Definitely, you're going to learn the most, and this is what we really want you to do. We want you to go to the county website. You saw us fumbling with the Zoom. We get it. Not everybody's technically savvy. But we try to put as much information on here as possible in an easily digestible way. And so, Kathy, if you want to just scroll down, you can click on the picture of the. So if you go to the Summit County website, which is summitcounty.gov, Oh, real quick, I just want to say that Heather is here, so if you have specific questions about your valuation, or you want to fill out a senior exemption form while you're here, she will be out there in the hallway to assist with any of that. Okay. Yes, so you're on the county website, and then on the homepage, there's a picture of a home. If you click on that, that'll take you to the assessor's website, or if you go to elected offices, assessor link is under that option as well. So this is our landing page, and first things first, you want to look at your property data. If you haven't discovered the property information search and maps link yet, you're missing out, man. This is where you can see what your neighbors pay for their properties. And there's this beautiful map here of the county. You can search by, let's just search by owner name. I'm sure that there's not too many Eurich around here. Robert Eurich spells his name a little differently from me. We're going to look up my property.
Sorry. Operator error.
So yeah, there's 5 different search options. Definitely want to look at, this is where we're going to go to look at our property data. And here, now we'll go to show detailed data. It's the button right below the map. And that pulls up your property's data. You'll want to check this information at the bottom. That's where your square footage is, where your year built, that AEJ year. You were asking about that, ma'am. That's how our adjusted year built. That's basically how our office tracks effective age. So, you know, sometimes you'll put a new roof or some windows, and that extends the life of your structure. So that's where we track those kind of changes or improvements to your property. Bedroom, bathroom count, all that jazz. So up here, though, on the upper right box, that's where you can see your tax area. I am in tax area 3 in Breckenridge. And then if you click on estimated tax, you see that button that was hidden there? This takes you to basically what's on your tax notice. This was this is my estimate based on the 2022 mill levy. And this shows the breakdown of the different taxing rates in my tax area. As you can see, a portion goes to Summit County government and the school district. Those are the biggest taxing areas or tax entities in my area. So yeah, just to give you an idea there. And again, we call that an estimated tax for 2023, and it's not payable in 2024. And that's because, again, we don't know what the mill levies will be yet for 2023.
No, they're not seeing the screen.
Bear with us. We're screen sharing. So, thank you for asking that. Senior exemption here in the state of Colorado, you have to be 65 as of January 1 of the tax year. You have to have lived in your home for 10 years as your primary residence to qualify. And we look up your voter registration, where you registered your car to confirm that. There are senior exemption forms available on our website. You can always come into the office, and Heather is here today now with them as well. That basically, when you qualify for that, that takes $100,000 off of your actual value. Another thing about that senior exemption is this Proposition HH that'll be on the ballot in November. That basically is proposing to increase the exemption to $140,000, and it would also make it affordable. So let's say you qualified for it up here, and then, you know, your daughter in Denver is like, my kids really need their Mimi to come help with daycare. Will you move to Denver? So if that's a scenario like that, and you need to sell your home up here, but you're staying in the state of Colorado and you've already qualified for the exemption, you could take it with you. That is something that the Colorado Assessors Association has been pushing for over a decade now, that kind of portability. And only now is this a ballot measure for us to vote on. Personally, I think it should just. But so that's where you want to check your property's data, is the property information search and map. And you can play around on this screen here with the map. There's this identify button. Is the eye in the little black circle. That's if you activate that option and then click on parcels around you, that's where you can see what your neighbors paid and how big their house is. Yes, sir. No, it does not. This is public information. We try to keep your complaints private. Yes, sir. No, so this is a reappraise. Oh, you mean the property data? The property data. This is where you just look up your individual personal property. And I'm encouraging you to look at your property data, look at your mailing address. I can't stress how many of these postcards we get returned to us, and how many angry people are like, you didn't know I moved. And so just to be able to get your tax notices, your valuation notices. We don't have a crystal ball. If we did, we probably would have won the lottery by now. So please, you know, make sure your mailing address is correct and your property data is correct. Because a lot of homes we haven't been in personally. Sometimes we're able to sneak in there just before people move in. If it's new construction and we happen to be out in the field and the contractors are there doing their finishing touches, we might get to walk around. But that's a rarity. And also because our values are multiple regression or derived from multiple regression analysis, we're relying heavily on your property's data to set your value. Because when we analyze all the sales within that 5-year study period, we came up with different adjustment factors for different property characteristics. We looked at all the sales to say, to figure out exactly, oh, okay, well, you know, in Breckenridge, a good view goes for, you know, actually goes for more than a place that's down in town and looks directly at their neighbors. Or, you know, recently, bathrooms. People are putting a lot more bathrooms in their homes. So we're noticing that, yeah, they're driving some value. So now, once you look at your property data, take a good look here, think about it, let us know, you know, if there's any issues with the data. That's always step 1. Step 2, you'll want to go to the real property valuation page. And that is the page where we have a little ditty explaining the reappraisal, our max appraisal methodology, as well as the required time adjustment, an explanation of our economic areas. This is all information that we put out there to explain your value and our multiple regression analysis. So we have 3 different regression models. We have one for condos, one for residential properties, and one for vacant land. And the reason why condos have their own model is because they are basically airspace. You own from drywall to drywall. You don't have land value associated with a condo value. So that's where you can learn all about our time adjustment and how we came up with these different adjustment factors. Also on this, oh yes, the reappraisal sales list. There's also a link on the page to the reappraisal sales list. These are lists of all the properties in our study period that sold and whose data we used. So if you're going, hey, I know that there weren't any sales in my subdivision in 2022, but I know that there were a bunch in 2021. How do I get a hold of those? You can go to the reappraisal sales list link on that property valuation page. And we have broken out the sales list for residential condos, thereby economic area, and then for residential improved properties, thereby property type, duplex, triplex, manufactured housing, single families, or townhomes. And so here, all these sales lists are in Excel spreadsheet form. If you're familiar with manipulating one of them, you can, filter the different columns. Maybe you want to filter out all the other neighborhoods and just zero in on your neighborhood. Because again, there's no sales in your subdivision, but there were sales around you. So for me, I'm in the Warriors Mark neighborhood, 21050 is my neighborhood code. So whenever you look at your property data, you might want to take note of what your neighborhood code is, so that you can look at the sales within your neighborhood. We try to, as they say in real estate, location, location, location. So we try to use comps within your immediate area, similar in size, similar in age, and similar in quality of construction. That's correct. That data is for the study period, yes. I'm sorry, the neighborhood code, yes. So remember when we did the property information search and maps, that brought up the map? So it's whenever you're looking at your property data. So when you're looking at the map, you can enter your owner name. There's 5 search options: owner name, subdivision, street address, and schedule number. If you have your postcard with you, you can always just type in your schedule number. I'm disgusting. I know my schedule number by heart, but that's my job. No, it is not.
Right here, right here.
Yeah, so when you have your property data up in that upper right box, the 4th line down, that's your end hood, is neighborhood code, yeah, end hood.
Where are we going?
So yeah, those are the reappraisal sales lists. It's definitely worth taking a look at those and seeing, you can filter it out to your area or neighborhood, and then you can also sort it by size or age, or even if you have a certain hey, I'm on the river in Frisco. What were river properties selling for? I don't know of any around me, immediate surroundings, but I'm sure maybe there were. Go ahead, and those are great lists to look at. And again, we cannot consider sales that occurred after that appraisal date of June 30th, 2022. Also, we don't have that data yet. We're data collectors the majority of the year, and we still haven't seen how the market is responding to the short-term rental restrictions. That's been a big thing people have appealed on in Breckenridge, and we're still collecting that data. We'll know more the next reappraisal. Similarly, we do know that the market softened because of the increase in the interest rate. It's softened though, it hasn't changed. We still have really low inventory, and that is what's holding our value. Of course, now we're not, homes are sitting on the market for a week, whereas before it was 0 days on market, it was bidding wars and all that. Somebody was having fun with it. we were going, oh my gosh, people are gonna kill us. Yes, sir.
Really, we fight the assessment, feel the assessment. And we win maybe a little bit. That's just a Band-Aid, that's nothing compared to the tax rate that we pay on our increased value. Everyone in this room, at home. That is the meat and potatoes. That is where we're gonna be crushed in taxes. How do we go about that?
And so there's a question on the chat also saying they would like to know about how to address their mill levy. So maybe we should talk about the taxing entities.
Okay. That's a great question. You're right. This year, we have the opportunity to attack this from multiple angles. Obviously, appealing your value is your, one of those options. But we have to take a multi-pronged approach to this. And how do we deal with the mill? So in my recent research, I have learned that most or all of the towns, including Montezuma, all the towns in Summit County have deep roots or decay roots. They do not have those limits on their revenue. They can collect as much as they want. That was voter approved. They put those initiatives out there and the voters approved them. Again, it probably started with, without increasing taxes. So if you go to look at your property detail data and you see your taxing and your tax area, you can then look up the taxing entities within that area. That was that sheet that I showed you on mine where most of my mills go to the county and the school district. The different taxing entities hold budget meetings. And their calendar for these budget meetings is on all of their websites. And the assessor's office, we do have a list of all the taxing entities. Scroll down on the home page, assessment resources. We provide a list of the 2023 taxing entities and their contact information and their website. I do want to say that what I've learned as well in talking to our commissioners is that 2/3 of our bills go to voter-approved initiatives. And this is basically stuff that we approved, extra taxes to pay for wildfire mitigation, open space, child care, what else? Probably housing, all kinds of stuff. So that's 2/3 of our bills. So the commissioners, we said, yeah, we want you to collect that money for us. So they're not going to touch those 2/3 of the mills they collect because they have to collect it because we told them to do it. Because we want to preserve our open space and such. This reappraisal, I have learned so much about taxes. Before I was just like, value, but yeah, it's very interesting. Keeps you on your toes. Yeah, what the gentleman in back is speaking of is basically the Tabor revenue limit on taxing entities and how much they can collect. And I do know that one district is the Elkins Water District. They have reached out and said, hey, you can tell our homeowners in our area that we are going to lower our mill levy. And he gave me a whole explanation of bonds and how they set their budget and such. And that was great for me to learn that, because we're not involved in any of those budget meetings. We do not set the tax rate. We only value the property. And this is your opportunity to approach this in a multi-pronged kind of strategy, so to say. And, you know, get in touch with your taxing entity, find out what are they going to be spending this money on. You know, I think of Summit EMS, Summit Fire and EMS, and the large area that they cover, and they don't really have a fire station in Silverthorne. So I know some of them probably could really use the money. And then others are planning on lowering their bills. And like the guy with the Alpensy Water District told me, he said, we're okay with lowering it. If we can't get it back up, we'll be fine. We you know, managed our budget very responsibly. So we're not all in those kind of areas, unfortunately, but see. So now let's go. What we talked about, checking your property data, property information search and map. We talked about your, you know, learning more about your property valuation and the sales within the study period. Now let's go to the notice the valuation archive search. Mine's not going to come up with any sales because I'm resale capped. Let's go with 4500039.
Okay.
Favorite housing reference. All right, so this is basically, that link takes you to the archive search for notices of valuation. You can look up your notice of value going back to 1999 here. This landing page shows you some comps. It does not show the adjustments happening to the comps other than that heart attack adjustment, which is a time adjustment. Nobody likes the time adjustment. But with this link here, there was a box at the top of that previous page that says helpful links. And in that box, we have the appraiser report that shows the sales comparable grid and all the adjustments being applied to the sale. And then we have the calculation ladder. And that's really the building blocks of your value. Kathy doesn't like it when I use blocks.
We love it.
She thinks we're on Sesame Street or something. But this is the regression value. These are the different regression adjustment factors that came out of analyzing those 5 years of sales. And it shows how those different characteristics of your property are contributing to your value. To, you know, location is a big one. And different areas get different adjustments for their various locations. We also have a different time adjustment for the different areas of the county. Some places just appreciate at a faster rate than others. So that's to give you an idea of that notice valuation archive search. From there, just to get an idea of your regression value, if you come in and talk to anybody, any of our appraisers in the office, they're going to print off that stuff from that page to go over it with you. So next, let's file an appeal. Again, there's multiple ways in this task, okay? You can email it, assessor@summitcountyco.gov. That's probably the best way. If you have a lot of attachments that you want to include, the online submission form does not accept attachments. It also wants your security key. But email, we basically just confirm that your signature or your, you know, name on the email and your email address matches somewhat with the ownership on your property. So you can email, you can do the online submission, you can be in person, or you can mail it to our PO Box 276 in Breckenridge. So to give you an idea of the online filing, you would go to file a current year appeal on this appeals page. And that takes you to where you would enter your schedule number. And then the other box is the security key. That security key is on your postcard. If you don't have your postcard, do not fret. Again, you can email your appeal. Yeah. Do we want to file an appeal for you right now, sir? Since you have your postcard? So again, if you're going to do it this way online, just know that you can't make any attachments. But have no fear, if you don't really need to attach all those sales comparables that your realtor provided, you can just provide us with either the MLS number, we have access to the MLS, or you can provide us with the street address or unit number if it's a condo. If you want us to look at sales, you don't need to make those attachments. You can just include some information about that sale, well, whether it be the address or the MLS number. And then, so like I was saying, that value on your postcard, you're looking at it going, well, yeah, I think I could have sold my house for this as of June 30th of 2022. It's not what you can sell your house for today, it's what you could have sold your house for about a year ago. But if you're not spending that and it's too high, you will want to include information about your property, whether it's like this young lady up here was telling me she's got condition issues, her HOA. So that's something she would want to include in her appeal, that the condition of her property is not being maintained. Or, you know, that we've had a lot of new buildings. So maybe there's a condo that was built right behind your house and now it blocks your view of Mount Royal. That's, and we have your view as being good because you're looking at Mount Royal and trees. And now you're looking at somebody's kitchen table through a window. You know, bring that up because we're not there. We're not in your house. Sometimes we try to account for all of this when we're out in the field, but we are also not out in the field in the dead of winter. So we have a limited amount of time, as you know, up here in Summit County, to get out there and see the sidewalk and learn more about people's properties. Boots on the ground kind of deal. I do want to point out that we are not trying to raise your value. We don't do that. We don't do that at this level. We don't want to piss you off any more than we already did. And really, we didn't want to piss you off. So if you're concerned that, you know, we don't have that fourth bedroom that you put in without a permit or something, we're not going to discover it and raise your value this go around. We do want to have our data correct though, so be ready for that bedroom to appear on your data next year. But this year, I think we've done enough to really shock our community. So yeah, you will not get penalized for appealing. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we have different time adjustment factors for not just the different property types. There's different ones for, you know, land, condos, and residential, but then also the different areas have different time adjusted factors. And Kathy, would you want to speak to this more? We do on our, go ahead, on that real property valuation page, we have the timetable. Let's go ahead and pull that up and take a look at it. Because it's kind of complicated, we didn't just apply one rate over those 5 years. The line was flying. I like to rhyme, but so, you know, usually in winter, things are pretty slow. There's a lesser rate of appreciation happening in winter. And then in summer, you know, that's whenever those realtors are out there and really selling properties. People want to see yards when they pay this much for a property. So our big buying season is summer, and that's when we see the time adjustment factor go up. This is our time group for Frisco. As you can see here, it was going at a pretty nice rate there from 2017 to about July of 2020. And then, damn, we've never seen anything like this. This is, when we were looking at these, we were going, oh no, people are just going to be arguing time, and we hate to talk about it.
Go in the car?
We're trying to stop time, but we have to also be statistically compliant. The assessors' offices throughout the state of Colorado are audited by the state to make sure that we comply with statutes, and also that we, as my daddy used to told me, oh, it's your job to abuse everyone equally. So the auditor's office makes sure we abuse everyone equally. And our time adjustment is one of those factors that they look at. And Kathy labored over it, so with it, like, oh my gosh, they're gonna kill us. We gotta stop time somewhere. Where can we stop time? So you can see there's a little tail at the end that just flattens on a lot of these charts, because that's all we could stop time with still being statistically compliant for our auditor. Because if we don't apply time at all, then we don't pass the audit, and then we have to revalue everybody again and apply time. So you're gonna be like, whoa, I got some time. Right. And then it's like, oh, psych, we have to do this again because, and then we give you new values, and then heart attack is still gonna come. So this graph of this time group here for Keystone and Copper shows that flattening a lot better. And so we didn't want that line to keep going. It was indicating some higher values. And so we flattened it out as much as we could. Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's a great question. The madam was asking, how do the comps really affect the value if we're going to suggest looking at any comp? Since the value is basically derived from the different adjustment factors for the different property characteristics. And sometimes no, sometimes yes. The idea here is that we developed this regression value using the 5 years of sales data. And the ultimate goal, though, is that for the last 2 years of sales data, July of 2020 to June 30th of 2022, the sales data in that time period supports the regression value. Because when you appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals at the state level or beyond, they're going to want to know what sales occurred right around the appraisal date that supports your value. They do allow us to use these mass appraisal techniques. It's used by most all counties in the state. I mean, we are dealing with a universe of properties here, and you don't want appraisers valuing each one by hand. That'll really increase our taxes. And one good point I'd like to point out here too, and what I wrote in my article that was in the paper earlier this week, is that Colorado still has some of the lowest taxes in the nation. We are the 3rd lowest taxes. And my belief is that is a result of our assessment rate. In addition to our mill levy, we're the only state that employs two different rates for calculating taxes. Of course, it would be much lower if Gallagher wasn't repealed. But we are trying to find solutions to this, and hopefully something that is more sustainable, but that is also beneficial to our commercial property owners. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a great question. So we value properties as a whole. And, oh, yes, what the gentleman was asking was, how does the land value get calculated and how does that have to play in the value, right? Just repeating that for our Zoomers. So we value the property as a whole. Its highest and best use at the moment is with your house on it. Unless they recently rezoned your area, but we'll not go into that. So we value it as a whole, and then we allocate the value between land and improvement. So we do not value your land separately if that's something that goes with your property. It's an allocated value, and really that's only there because you're allowed to depreciate your structures on your federal tax filing. That's the most popular question we get when these investment owners are doing their federal taxes. But it is an allocated value, and it's based on your size, your land size, and
It's a kind of complicated question. It's intended to make the allocation consistent across the county. It's based on your neighborhood's median land size versus yours, and your neighborhood's median value total. And it just estimates the land to total ratio and makes the allocation from the total.
So essentially,
typically not. It's based on a median value within your neighborhood. But, you know, if you want to discuss personal valuation stuff, please call our office. We are there. You won't be able to talk to an appraiser after June 8th. I'm sorry, that's just the case. We have until June 30th to render these decisions. Yesterday, we hit 2,500. We are expecting another 2,500 by this time next week. That's just human behavior. You wait till the deadline, you know? But if you call our office now, we'd be happy to know specifically, actually be able to look at your property data with you and address this question better. So just to give you an idea, and we can wrap this up and take some questions too. I just wanted also to go to the Summit Association of Realtors website. This is the MLS that all the realtors are using to look at properties and such and schedule showings. They have a really great data tool to help them. And this just gives you an idea of what I keep saying here, in that this is historical. We have never seen these kind of dramatic increases in sales prices in Colorado until now, until after COVID. And so you see the line here on this is 5 years Unfortunately, it's also showing what happened after our appraisal date of June 30th, 2022. But you can see, it's been going steady, you know, at a normal rate, everything that we can digest. And then boom, that line, those sale prices, those median sale prices just shoot up. And right around our appraisal date, they kind of level out a bit. And the market is still holding, like I said, because of this inventory. Now, if you want to click on maybe active listings. Oh, no, that'll tell us now. Yeah, so we still have some pretty low inventory. That's why our you know, the market softened, but we haven't seen much of a decrease in value. And that's because our inventory is basically non-existent. Also, I think just looking at days on market really tells this story pretty good as well. When we were looking at this data that was coming in, these sales right after COVID, we were just, 0 days on market. You know, they already had a buyer before this was even listed. We were talking to some buyers saying, how did you find out about this? And they said, well, I have a realtor friend and they knew that their friend wanted to sell their house. So we asked them to reach out. We were seeing bidding wars. This is, you know, I would love for this graph to go back another, 3 years, just so you could see how stable things were until COVID hit. And then it just went crazy. So I think those are what we're seeing. I want you guys to see, because we are also astounded by it. And that's why we're doing this outreach. And I hope that I answered, I helped you guys all understand, where we're coming from, what the parameters are that we have to operate within. And then also that, don't overthink it. Just file your appeal, okay? Let us know information about your property though. That is most helpful when you file your appeal. To say, oh, this is too high, it's like, okay, well, where do I, we look at some sales. When we're looking at these appeals, if you give us information about your property, that really helps us know where to start, other than, okay, let me just review the sales again. If you tell us, hey, my view is now blocked because all those trees are 10 feet higher and I can't see the mountains, tell us that. We need to know that. We do a lot of discovery through this whole process, and we want to have good data. That's why I took you guys to look at your property information first on the property information search map link. Look at your data. Good data in, good value out. And that's why we're out there, doing inspections and things like that. And we're reaching out to you guys, and there's not an adversarial spirit, sort of say, in the assessor's office. We all live in Colorado too. We saw these increases as well with our, well, maybe not me because I'm resale cap. But I'm grateful for what I have. But, we have people in our office that live in Park County, and their values went up 97%. It's a statewide thing. Yes, sir.
Miles away. That normal? On a golf course, which is, completely different where my property.
Yeah, location is always important. The gentleman had a question. He had his comp grid and he was asking about a comp being 2 miles away. I would say 2 miles, does that neighbor or that subdivision that comp was pulled from, is it facing similar neighborhood issues that yours does? Do you guys have the same kind of access to services and emergency stuff? You want to get in your location, but again, sometimes you don't have a sale right next to your house. So you have to branch out. We don't use Breckenridge sales to value Frisco or Silver Ford. We don't do that. we stay within your economic area. That's what we call the economic area. But then within the economic area, we have neighborhoods. And so that sales might not be on your same street or in your subdivision, but it's in your same neighborhood. And that neighborhood all has bus service and is, you know, within 20 minutes of the senior center. You know, you have some kind of homogeny there in that area.
Just for sanity check, my value went up 74.2%.
Yes, the gentleman said he was just checking his sanity and is about 74% increase normal. This go around, yes. Where we saw the biggest increases in value was vacant land. Let's think about that too. If you've been in this county for a while, you know the vacant land that's left to buy is steep and rocky and probably not a good shape or conducive to building. But we saw some serious increases in land value. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Okay, yeah, so the madam in the back was asking about, in her appeal, should she focus on the comps that were used and the differences between the comp and her subject property? And basically, it is standard appraisal practice to apply adjustments to all the sales. You know, this is not Denver. We don't have a lot of tract home neighborhoods where it's very uniform houses. There's a lot of custom homes here, a lot of spec homes. So standard appraisal practice is to use sales of similarly located properties, similar size, similar age, and make adjustments to the sales to bring them to the level of the subject property. So like you were saying that, you know, the sale has 5 bedrooms and mine's a 4-bedroom. Well, that sale price is being adjusted down to account for your lesser bedroom count. But I think really the big thing here is the time adjustment. Let's just be real. I mean, we were all looking at that scratch and seeing what happened after the lockdowns let up and how the market just exploded with value. All right. Any more questions? Do you have a question, Michael? Good question. Yes. So this woman has her property data printed out right here, which is great. And she was asking the difference between view. What's the difference between a good scenic view and a typical? Our office considers a typical view to be what's typical in your neighborhood. Trees and other homes and improvements in your view. A good view would be of mountains, maybe little obstruction. Like you'll see some homes in the foreground, but you get to see some mountains. And then we have an excellent view, which is panoramic and unencumbered or unobstructed. So yeah, a good view would be that you have something nice to look at. You're not looking right at all your neighbors or in a typical fashion for your area. Yes, ma'am. Good is better than typical. Yeah. And then also when it comes to condition of your property, this was a question that was asked last week. It's rare that we always call a property's condition average. And when we're calling it average, that's because we're taking in the age of the property. When we say, okay, so we know that this home was built in 1980, and we're calling it average condition for its age. we never use anything above average when it comes to condition. So if you maintain your property well, but you have not done any upgrades since 1980, we know that, your property is 40 years old and it's an average condition for its age. We're not going to say it's in good condition because, you paint the trim every year and you got a new roof last year. We're not going to do that. We don't do that. But what we do is maybe change the condition to poor or fair. And those are basically, poor would be uninhabitable in our eyes. We have a few of those. We have many more than you would imagine, actually. And that would be an uninhabitable property is poor. Fair would have to have some really obvious deferred maintenance that we can see from the exterior. We are, like you said, we don't have a crystal ball. We are not in your home. I barely know how to use Zoom. I don't know how to hack into your computer web camera. So we don't know what's going on in your home. But if you have obvious deferred maintenance from the exterior that could that affects, your condition rating, then you need to tell us about that. I mean, sometimes, siding needs to be replaced. And so we'll get some really chewed up siding that has lots of water damage or something like that. Or if you've got leaks in your roof that you're just patching because it's on the list, but you don't get around to it. Let us know. That is a condition issue. With that being said, I know this is already really complicated. I'm going to throw in one more date, though, to complicate things a bit more. We have the appraisal date, which you guys, hopefully you have pounded that in your head by now. We also have this thing called the assessment date, and that is January 1 of every tax year. Assessors are required to assess property as it stands on January 1 of the tax year. So this basically refers to new construction. Or let's say, in Breckenridge, there was a house that exploded a few years ago. There was an explosion and it demolished the improvement. And that happened in like October or November. So we assessed the house as it stood on January 1 of the tax year. The values went out, they were set, and then this house was basically exploded. So we had to prorate the value based on when it was basically destroyed. Or let's say, you had a leak and you had to rip out a bunch of drywall to fix the leak. And that leak happened right around, October or something at the end of the tax year. Hey, let us know when it happens, but we can't go back and change your value for that tax year. We can adjust it though for the following tax year where the assessment rate is January 1. So kind of clarify on that, January 1 of 2023 was our assessment date for this tax year. You have a leak and you have to rip out a bunch of drywall. That happened, gosh, in this case, let's say that happened in May. We can't go back. It happened after January 1. We have to give you a full value because your house was still intact on January 1. But we still want to know about it. And so for 2024, we will adjust your value because your house on January 1 of 2024 still has drywall pulled out and you're dealing with contractors and it's a giant headache. Things aren't going as quickly as you wanted it. We hear all the stories. Yes, ma'am. Okay, the madam was asking about duplexes and where you have a shared party wall and her neighbor isn't maintaining their home like she had. I don't want to get involved in the neighborhood dispute. Don't be that neighbor though. We can only look at your value, and that neighbor, if we're not aware of their deferred maintenance issues, their value is probably the same as your value. If you guys are very similar properties in age or size, if you have similar, location and age, should have similar values. But yeah, unfortunately, that's something you gotta handle on your own with that neighbor. Okay, the woman was asking how we determine actual value. So that is, and this information again, yes, this information is on the real property valuation page of our website. We use a mass appraisal technique called multiple regression analysis. And in that analysis, we are allowed to use up to 5 years of data prior to our appraisal date of June 30th, 2022. We look at all those sales and we see what drives value, what different property characteristics are driving value, whether that's their east side location, that's the number of bathrooms or bedrooms they have, maybe it's their view. So these 5 years of sales, we basically use those sales to derive different adjustment factors for the various property characteristics. And then, what those property characteristics that you have then are being adjusted, and that's the calculation ladder that's on the notice of valuation archive search. I'm sorry, it's not a one-word answer to that question, and a lot of this. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, yes. Thank you for clarifying that question. The value on the notice of value postcard is your actual value. Yes.
Market value.
Market value as of June 30th, 2022. That's the assessor's opinion of your value as of June 30th, 2022. And you want to look at that value and go, well, could I have sold my house on that date for that value? If you're looking around and go, gosh, I know he sold his, and my place is way better than his place, don't appeal. Where does the state mandated? So the state requires all assessors' offices to adjust for differing market conditions from the sale date to the appraisal date. Is that what you need? Oh, yeah. So we go back to that slide in the PowerPoint. So the state assessment rate used to be a floating rate as dictated by Gallagher. And last year, Senate Bill 22-238 was passed. And that lowered the assessment rate. Last year, 2022, it was 6.95%. This year, for 2023, that bill lowered it to 6.765%. That is the same rate that is being applied to every residential property's actual value. That rate is different for commercial. It's 27.9% for commercial and vacant land. Quite a bit more. And so this just gives you an idea of your actual value multiplied by that assessment rate gives you an assessed value. I know a lot of people say, well, my assessed value is this, because you're looking at the postcard, because you're thinking it's coming from the assessor, so it's assessed value. And here in Colorado, we're the only state that has an actual specific assessed value, because we are the only state that employs an assessment rate in addition to a mill levy rate. Yes, sir, right here. Yes.
The cost of building different than those homes that are built like that. For instance, they aren't taxed same way. And because their actual value are less.
They're limited, yeah, they're capped.
And, they don't pay for, people who buy them aren't charged for the permitting. Those are artificially kept low compared to the rest. Yet, these are people that are using the same things we're using in terms of taxes. Why aren't those homes, even though they're capped, compared to what similar dwellings would be for tax purposes?
The gentleman asked why the resale capped, we call them resale capped homes in our office. They are not part of our analysis because their valuation is basically a calculation. Sales are not considered when valuing those homes. We're valuing them according to their deed restrictions. And so he was asking, why aren't they considered in the analysis?
Not.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So a higher value than what they could sell it for. Gosh, do you imagine how pissed off they would be?
Well, yeah, but they are who
They would never, they,
Probable price.
so, we do value them according to their deed restriction. And that's, they're limited on their maximum resale price is limited and it's dictated by that restriction. So I personally, and I don't think any other, I think most assessors would agree with me that we don't to tax them according to their market rate when that is appreciation that they will never realize. Those are, that's a sales price that they will never get, but yeah, we're gonna tax them on it. I can't get behind that 100%.
organizations like myself are going to be paying, okay, to support those communities for their services and whatnot, because they're not paying their share. You yourself live in these
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
Okay, but the neighbors that are in the same place that are not in these restrictions will be paying a lot more tax than you.
Yeah, but they can also sell their place for a lot more. And I have a fun story too about when I bought my place. You know how you have to get an appraisal from the bank, right, for your loan? The appraiser, it's funny, he's not an appraiser, I work in an appraisal office. He valued my home for my mortgage at full market value. And his, not a jurisdictional exception, it's extraordinary assumption. That's the term we use in appraisal. His extraordinary assumption he put into his appraisal was that if I default on my loan and don't pay the bank, then the bank basically takes ownership of my place, and that wipes away the deed restriction. So the bank can then sell it for $700,000, and I had paid, $295,000 sale price. So the bank required me to go out and get more insurance to cover my home for $700,000, and that didn't happen to any other of my neighbors. I was like, man, I figured how ironic. Sir, that is just something that, that is what people pay for their taxes is not included in that restriction. But again, I'm telling you the answer is that I'm not able to realize those, the appreciation that other people do And, I would feel wrong to tax people on a value that they don't actually see, or they will never actually collect when they sell their place. And you're right, they don't ever sell. And I have gone to the town of Breckenridge to say, hey, you know, why don't, you need to give us deed restricted people more opportunities to be able to save money so that I can get out of here. Because I don't want you to take me out of my deed restricted home when I assume room temperature. I want to, you know, I grew up in Florida. I grew up cleaning my parents' apartment in Florida, and they always drilled into my head that you build wealth through property. And when I can't afford anything here, but I love this place. What do you think about this deed restriction thing? At least I get a garage to put my bike in. And my mom said to me, you know, 3% is what, you know, 3 to 5% is average for the rest of the nation. That's what we see appreciating with our rental properties in Florida. So she said, you know, if that's all you can afford, go for it. I'd rather you have a solid place to live than being constantly kicked out by your landlords because they're going to sell their place because they realize how much they can get for it. And she told me I was basically buying a lifestyle. But I understand your question. It's not our thing to answer. Are you asking to discuss the assessment rate? We have the value according to market, and that was that's set by the state. Yeah, all residential property is valued according to market, what it could sell for as of our appraisal date of June 30th, 2022. Yes, sir.
What I'm hearing is there's a lot of factors. What are the factors? Put in, here's the, put in. Challenge. You challenge specific competencies. Can you differentiate it from our opportunities?
Gotcha. Thank you, sir, for bringing the conversation back to the topic at hand. And the gentleman was asking, you know, what's the best way to appeal? What can we argue that'll get our attention and that we are able to actually consider changing? And that is your data, first and foremost. You know, like she was saying, she was looking at her view, you know, is your view now typical for the area? And maybe we have it as good because those trees got built up or grew, so they're now blocking it more. The time adjustment is not a good thing to argue. And that is because, like I said earlier, we have to abuse everybody equally. So we can't change the time adjustment for just your property. If we are redoing a time adjustment, it's for the entire county, for that entire time group. And we labored over these time adjustments quite a bit because we know we've done this before. We know what's going to piss you off, and it was astounding to us as well. But that is not an area that you want to concentrate on. You definitely want to concentrate on the sales and your property's data and anything that we could, you know, that we probably don't know that's not there accounted for in the data, whether it be a lesser view, whether it be that you have some deferred maintenance, whether it be, you know, your construction quality. Yeah, focus on those things and the sales. Like I said, we went back 5 years for the regression analysis. But the goal ultimately is that the last 2 years of sales support that regression value. So if there are some sales that you think are similar to your property, in location, size, and age, then indicate those in your appeal, or, that there's no sales in your immediate subdivision in 2022, but maybe there's sales in your neighboring subdivision, and those are homes that are kind of similar to yours in quality and age, then, point those out to us. I think that was a great question. Yes, sir.
If the house next to you became a short-term rental and all the people coming in all the time with noise and everything, is that a beta? So is that of any factor?
No, the gentleman was asking about, parties at the short-term rental next to you. And, we do not have any kind of, we don't take that into account in the valuation. The assessor's office does not track owner usage of your property. So if it is short-term rented, that is, all those records are kept by the town who are issuing those permitting licenses. But we are not privy to what's short-term rental or not, and, or, who's, we know if you're out of state because your mailing address on your account. But, yeah, we just don't have an adjustment for noise. And I think that's more of, I know in Breckenridge, there's a number that you can call to report those incidences. And then the more nicks that person gets on their scorecard, lesser chance they're going to renew that short-term rental license when they go to renew it. But yeah, that's your town that you want to go to on that issue. So let's do one more question in the back. Okay, yes, the madam was asking, what's the difference between quality and condition? Yeah. So quality is basically a grade on your construction quality. So not all homes are built equally. Some of them have, they even have stories behind their building materials. And so that refers to your construction quality, your grade. And we have, we have average, we have fair. Fair is usually some of those really older homes that have like mud sill foundations. They originally were built with plumbing because they were built in 1880. Recently, when the Shock Hill neighborhood of Breckenridge was being built, and we started to see more houses there, these houses had like bowling alleys and movie theaters and, a wine storage room that was temperature and humidity controlled, and it had, wine barrels from Italy imported over, and we looked at some of these houses and we went, wow, this is beyond the grade, any kind of grade that we have currently. So we came up with an exceptional grade to address those homes where, the lumber is coming from Norway and the insulation is equal. And so I'm just going to be honest with you, because that grade is so new in our system, we didn't go back, and say, oh, what other homes are exceptional? We don't have time for that. And plus, construction quality and materials change over time. We understand that. They've really evolved into quite some impressive stuff. So anyway, back to this exceptional, there's a handful of houses that are graded this high in the county, majority of them being in Breckenridge. If those houses don't sell in our data collection period, we don't have an adjustment factor for that high of quality grade. So we use the same adjustment factor for excellent grade homes. It's just one of those things where, similar to short-term rental restrictions, we don't have the data yet in the market. We don't have the market data showing us what these restrictions are doing to sale prices. You know what? Please contact our office with that question. Some areas vary a bit, and yeah, we have a whole manual we can share with you. All right, well, we're gonna close this out, and I really appreciate all y'all's time, and just know that don't overthink it, file your appeal, and have a wonderful day. There's handouts as well, ma'am, that maybe you want. Oh, sure. Oh, cool. Okay, no worries. There's a hot seat.
You guys are gonna be coming in here with a security,
Well,
5 state.
maybe next time we'll need one, I don't know. We've heard that there have been issues with some other counties, some other county assessors being threatened at gunpoint, actually. Yeah.
Question I have.
Trying to advocate